Yes, that would be great.
Hi, good morning.
Morning and
Hey,
welcome.
hey, Craig, it's great to
Thank
see you.
you. Hey, how
Good
are you, Mr.
morning.
Tucker?
Doing very well.
Great. Thanks for having me this Saturday morning.
um, so Linda, would you like us just to kind of jump into the 10:30 session?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Craig, it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning. It sounds like your Friday was really busy, and I know that you stay really busy with your work with Representative Aderholt in the Shoals. But thanks so much for joining. You and Linda and I have emailed a little bit about today, but I want to do a brief introduction of you for everybody here. Also, we had emailed a little bit, so you see about 24 folks on the call. I don't know how your screen is showing, but we have about 24 folks from all over Alabama who have joined us today via this Zoom link. This is kind of a restart of what's known as Partners in Policymaking, but this is really a powerful kind of national effort to support individuals with disabilities and their families to be self-advocates for things that they are addressing in their life, and then also to grow together and maybe to identify issues that cut across populations or states, that kind of thing. So systemic issues, so that they can determine, maybe issues that they want to bring to somebody like you and Representative Aderholt or others. We are nearing the end of this year's set of sessions, Craig. This is number 7 out of 8 weekends. So you can see that the people who have gathered here have really put in a lot of time to this effort. So I know that you're familiar with us at ADAP, the Alabama Disabilities Advocacy Program, but we operate in Alabama as partners with Linda, who you see, who has coordinated this program for the year. Linda works at UAB, and then we also coordinate with the DD Council in Montgomery. I'm not sure that I see Daryl or Holly here today, but we have a lot of support for people, individuals and their families who live with a range of developmental disabilities in the state. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more background. Linda, I don't know that we need to do 24 introductions. Maybe as the conversation proceeds, if individuals have a question or a comment, you can kind of identify yourself. So with that as a little bit of introduction, just generally for the program, I also want to say a word. My colleague, Nancy Anderson, Associate Director of ADAP, is also on today, Craig. So you have some folks who are working together to support the program, and then you've got a lot of self-advocates and family members who are with us today. With that, again, I can't thank you enough, Craig, for carving out the time and dedicating the time to be with us on a Saturday morning. It really means a lot. And I just want to say to everybody here that it's been a real pleasure for me to get to know Kreg in recent years. I'll give you just a little bit of a brief kind of formal introduction, but then I want to say a few words about how kind and decent Kreg and everybody in his office have been to work with us at ADAP. For about 10 years or so, Kreg has worked really closely with Representative Robert Aderholt. And for those of you in North Alabama, you know the representative well. Linda, is Aderholt your representative? Great.
Yes,
I see.
yes.
Yeah, so I know that other than kind of the Huntsville, Decatur metro area, Representative Aderholt is the member of Congress who really covers most of North Alabama. Kreg has been Representative Aderholt's district field representative in the Shoals area for about 10 years or so. And I'll just say, I shared this with Kreg when we met a few years ago. My mother grew up in Tuscumbia, so I have a keen appreciation for the Shoals area. Some of you may have heard Representative Aderholt referred to by some political commentators as kind of the third senator from Alabama. And with Senator Richard Shelby's retirement this year, we're going to have two younger in terms of tenure senators. At that point, Representative Aderholt really will be the dean of Alabama's 9-member congressional delegation. So he holds a vitally important position in Washington, D.C., representing the interest of all Alabamians, but of course, especially those members of his district. Like some others in West or Northwest Alabama, Kreg went over to Ole Miss to get his undergraduate and his law degree. So great to be able to also introduce a fellow lawyer to you folks. So with that, I just want to say, I think I first met Kreg a couple of years ago when Nancy Anderson, who is here today, and others here at ADAP had done a lot of work to address conditions of care at a children's residential facility in North Alabama. That's the Sequel facility in Cortland. After that, Kreg called me and said that Representative Aderholt had seen the report, was concerned, and we had some follow-up communication. And I just can't tell you, Kreg, how much it means for you to have reached out to us and to follow up on that report and express your concern and support for the work that we're doing. Since then, Kreg gets to Tuscaloosa occasionally. We've had the chance to sit down and meet, but I just wanted to take the chance to tell everyone here how much we appreciate the working relationship. With that, Kreg, maybe you could tell us more about the work that you do, the position that you hold, kind of the role that you play in connecting Alabamians through the district office to the work that's going on in Congress, and then we'll kind of open it up for a full discussion. I know people are going to have lots of questions. So thanks again for being here today, Kreg.
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. Tucker, and the feeling is mutual. I've enjoyed our working relationship, and yeah, regarding the Sequel facilities, when Mr. Tucker brought that issue and the just awful conditions to our notice, Congressman Aderholt absolutely wanted to get involved. And yeah, we wish, that stuff like that wouldn't happen, but it does. And so when it does happen, we need people in positions of authority to go to work. And that's what we were able to do. And we were happy to investigate from our end and send a letter along with Mr. Tucker and this organization to the appropriate officials. So anyways, with that, Mr. Tucker had asked me to talk kind of three-pronged discussion today. And one, he asked me to give a distinction between the DC office and the district offices and kind of the roles we play from that perspective. So I am from North Alabama. A little background on me. I grew up and live in a small little town in Franklin County called Red Bay. We're 3,200 strong, right on the Mississippi line. I tell people they could throw a rock out my bedroom window at my parents' house into Mississippi. So we're just right there, about 40 minutes south of the Shoals area, which is where my office is. I'm on campus at Northwest Shoals. The street that drives through campus is the city boundary between Muscle Shoals and Tuscumbia. So my office is on the Tuscumbia side of that. And I cover 4 counties for the Congressman. Those are Colbert County, which is the Shoals, Tuscumbia, Sheffield, Muscle Shoals. Then Franklin County, which is Russellville, Red Bay, Phil Campbell, Lawrence County, Moulton, Cortland, Town Creek, and then Marion County, which is Hamilton, Guin, Winfield, Brilliant, Hackleburg. So that's kind of my little area of the bigger 4th district. As you all know, the House geographically is based on population. We are a very rural district, so we are a very large district. We cover all or part of 16 counties, and that goes from the Alabama line to the Georgia line. Like I said, we have Colbert County up in the Shoals. The Tennessee River is the boundary up there. That's our northwest boundary. We go all the way down to the Black Warrior River in Tuscaloosa. So we don't have campus, but we have Northport and the portions of Tuscaloosa City that spill north of the river. Then we have Walker County, Jasper, Coleman County, Marshall County with Gunnersville and Albertville. And then we go on over to Etowah County, which is Gadsden, Rainbow City, and then up on the hills in DeKalb County with Fort Payne and Rainsville and all of that. So we have a very, very large district. Therefore, we have 4 district offices. Some districts, in bigger cities, including Alabama's 6th district with Gary Palmer, they're so geographically small, they may only have 1 or 2 district offices and still be able to adequately serve their constituents. With us being so spread out, there's no way we could do that. So we do have 4 offices. In all of the other offices, there are 2 staffers. In my office in the Shoals, it's just me. And personally, that's how I like it. So in this new redistricting that will take place for this upcoming election in November, as you know, the census is every 10 years. The House districts are based on the census population, how people shift, move, states grow, lose population. Alabama was on the brink of losing a congressional seat. It came down to Alabama and New York. And when we knew, oh, it's between us and New York, Chuck Schumer's got a lot of power in the Senate, we just figured we would lose the seat, but we held strong, and Governor Ivey and her whole team did a great job of promoting the census this past year, and we were able to hold our 7 congressional seats in Congress. That did mean that we shifted a little, not as much as we would have, with the growth and just huge surge in Huntsville, Madison County, Limestone County. That means that district, the 5th congressional district, will shrink. So we had to absorb some of their population. So we're going to move over into Lauderdale County, take most of the city of Florence and west. If you're familiar with that at all, there's a tiny little town over in northwest Alabama, Waterloo. And so we will pick up that area. I will take on about 45,000 additional constituents. Should we be reelected in the fall, that will take place when the new Congress is sworn in next January. So that's kind of a little bit about our geographical district. The employees in the district offices, it's kind of a twofold job description. We do casework. So if you, and this is what will benefit, a lot of everyday constituents. If you're having a problem, if you're a veteran needing help with your VA benefits, you call me. If you're trying to get on Social Security disability, you call me. If a big storm has come through, FEMA gets involved. If it's reached that level, then if your house, your business, whatever was destroyed, damaged in that storm, FEMA is not doing what they're supposed to do or not in a timely manner, you call me. If a constituent is having any type of problem with a federal agency, we act as your go-between. As you know, the red tape, the bureaucracy, it's pretty heavy. So we're able to open those doors and make those lines of communication happen for you. So the other part of my job and a district staffer's job is to be out and about, to be the face of our boss, Congressman Aderholt, when he's either in DC or in another part of the district. So if there are events going on, speeches that need to be given, ribbons that need to be cut, we go do that representing him, like I said, when he's away. An example of that is up in my area, there is NACOG, the Northwest Alabama Council of Local Governments, which covers 5 counties. So this consortium of 5 counties gives a stronger voice to individually Winston County, or cities and towns are able to pay and be a part of NACOG. So the town of Leeton in Colbert County, they will have a stronger voice coming from the group of NACOG than they would on their own. So NACOG has board meetings. They have fly-ins to DC. I go with them. I go to their board meetings and give them a DC update. This is what's going on. This is what the congressman's involved in. This is how it would help your town. I know these towns, the mayors, the county commissioners. I know their issues, their problems. So if I see something that's coming from DC that would help or hurt them, then we discuss that. How can we work around it? How can we bring this money to you? So that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then specifically, one thing that I do that is my favorite thing that I do for the congressman, he is able to appoint young men and women to our nation's service academies, Naval Academy, West Point, the Air Force Academy, and the Merchant Marine Academy. You do not have to have a nomination to the Coast Guard Academy. So every year I get to go around our district, meet these young men and women who are amazing. And just to let you know, the average ACT score the academies are taking right now is a 30. So that is an unbelievable score. And these are unbelievable young men and women who I get to deal with and play a small part in changing their lives. Once you go to a school like that, do your service commitment, then you're set. And these young men and women have learned from a young age how important that is. They're willing to make that commitment, and we're happy to play a small role in getting that to happen. So that's a little bit of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to give you an example of something that I'm doing right now, just to let you know kind of how what I just told you comes into play. If any of you are from the Shoals area or familiar with it, you know that TVA plays a huge role in North Alabama, and they have dammed up the Tennessee River all in Alabama. We have hydroelectric power. So on the Tennessee River here in the Shoals, there is Wilson Dam and Wilson Lock. Back last August, on the east side of Wilson Lock, the lock is how the commercial boat traffic, personal traffic gets from the lower end up to the lake or vice versa. So last August, there is a guide wall on the north end, or the east end of the lock that big barges, ships, they tie onto. Y'all all know what a barge is. You've seen it. There's about 5 to 15 feet, depending on the size of the barge, on either side that it has to play with to fit into this lock. That's not an easy thing to do. So they rely on this guide wall to kind of get them straight so they're not crashing into the lock or to the dam, whatever. Last August, this guide wall broke off of the lock and sank. It's at the bottom of Wilson Lake. So TVA gave up its congressional oversight and appropriations back in the 80s. They're a self-sustaining quasi-government entity, and they say they don't have the money to fix this guide wall. So as you can imagine, commercial traffic, personal use, to get through this lock is just stifled. It's trickling through. You all know we have supply chain issues going on in the country right now, and this is only making it worse here locally. Another big issue, this is Homeland Security. Huntsville, Decatur, with all of the defense and NASA traffic going on, they use the river. It is a cheap, easy, environmentally safe way to move their products. So the last piece of equipment to go through the lock was a satellite from NASA. Whenever they are able to get back through, probably the first piece of traffic to go through the lock will be another satellite from NASA. Those things are being held up or pushed onto our highways that are overcrowded and crumbling as it is. And we all know there's also a trucker driver shortage now also. So TVA needs to come to Congress to request an appropriation to get this guide wall fixed. TVA is not wanting to come back to Congress to possibly have oversight again. They love their self-sustaining, self-governing relationship that they have right now. They own the lock, the dam. The Army Corps of Engineers operates the lock. They're telling the Army Corps of Engineers to come ask for an appropriation. That's not how that works. So we're acting as mediators right now between TVA, the Army Corps, the Congressional Appropriations Team, and all of those locally who have interest in commerce going up and down the river. So that's one thing we're doing right now. Another thing, as you probably all know, earmarks are back. They're in a different titled community funded projects. I know back in the early 2000s, earmarks got a bad name, a bad reputation. And Speaker John Boehner from Ohio did away with those in 2009 or 10. But they are back in the form of community funded projects. So we are able, as a congressional office, to request ideas, submissions from all over our district, towns, counties, nonprofit organizations. What projects do you have going on that the federal government can send you some money to help with? So we put that out there. We have criteria. Folks from around the district send us their requests, their projects, their wants. And then we as a staff go through those. We know the criteria that they will be judged on with the Appropriations Committee in DC. So, a lot of times we have to go back to a mayor, a commissioner, and say, this is a great project. We hope we're able to find some avenue to help you. But right now it's not through an earmark. It doesn't fit the bill. So that's one thing our staff is going through currently. And, those should wrap up in the next few weeks. And then hopefully they will make their way through the Appropriations Committee, be voted on by the House, then the Senate, they reconcile, and the president will sign those bills into law, and we can send some federal dollars back home to Alabama. It's your tax money. So the congressman believes that the federal government should absolutely send your tax dollars back to improve your communities, your towns, your lives. And we should do that. Of course, we're not going to send you a blank check. Here's some money, do with it what you will. There will be, some strings attached, but he does not believe that the federal government should send you this money and then come and tell you exactly how to do this project, what it can and cannot be used for in minute specifics. You in the local level know how best your community needs help. So if we can send you that money and make sure you're using it for what you say you're using it for, we want to be able to do that. So those are two projects that I'm working on currently right now for the congressman, and how I'm involved with the community and making sure that the federal government is in some way working for you. How I got to this position in high school, I was involved in my local SAD chapter, Students Against Destructive Decisions, and we did a summer trip up to DC. And I met the congressman. We had a great rapport, talked, just he and I, one-on-one. So then in undergrad at Ole Miss, I was able to go up and do a summer internship. And that was wonderful. It got me out of small town Alabama and Mississippi, and really got to meet people from all over the country and just experience what they do in DC on a day-to-day basis. And I fell in love with it. So I did that for a summer in undergrad. Then during law school, between my 2L and 3L years of law school, I went back up and did a legal clerkship with his legislative director. And I loved it. I had one more year of law school left. He told me at the end of that summer, go back, graduate, pass the bar, and then if you want to come back up, I'll find a place for you. So I did. I graduated law school in 11, sat for the bar that July. And then at Labor Day, I went back up, and there wasn't a position at the time. So I was an intern for a few months. And then as soon as something did open up, he brought me on. I'm sure many of you know how protective and clingy sometimes our mothers can be. And my mother said, I will give you 2 years to live up there, and then you're bringing yourself home. So I did, but it was my choice. Of course, she would have been fine if I'd chosen to stay. But I love the South, and it was too cold in DC. My first Halloween up there, it snowed, and that was something, as we all know, does not happen. So I was anxious to get back down, and it just so happened after the 2010 redistricting, which those new lines took effect for the election of 2012 in November for the Congress that was sworn in January of 2013, we lost Decatur and Morgan County, and we had an office there. Well, that staffer wanted to come up to DC. We gained Lawrence County and Colbert County. So the congressman was looking to move our Decatur office over to the Shoals. He knew that's home for me. And so he offered me the opportunity to come down and open and run this office for him. So that's how I got here. In DC, again, yeah, the weather wasn't great, but you have to think in big picture in DC, these overarching themes. How is it going to affect the country as a whole? And that wasn't my niche. It wasn't what I enjoyed. And so when I got home and found out that district work is more one-on-one with constituents, when a veteran or a veteran's spouse or a veteran's widow calls and says, because of what you did, we were able to buy groceries this week, that means something. That's important to me. And I like dealing in smaller themes. So it was a natural fit. You've probably already picked up, I can talk all day long. So when I go out and represent the congressman, have meetings with Mr. Tucker, we fight for words. So it's been a great fit. He's a great boss, and I really enjoy this. As you know, as I said, the House is based on population. So there are 7 districts across Alabama. We're District 4. The Senate, Mr. Tucker also asked me to discuss the distinction between Senate office and House office. And how they're arranged, and it's all at the discretion of the member. It's however he or she feels comfortable with organizing their office. For the Senate offices, of course, they cover the state as a whole. They both, Senator Shelby and Senator Tuberville, both have offices in Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Mobile. And then Senator Shelby has his 5th office in Tuscaloosa, and Senator Tuberville has his 5th office in Dothan, so that each of them can kind of serve an area of the state that really isn't that close to another of their state office. The Huntsville office is the one that I work with the most. The field rep out of that office pretty much covers North Alabama. You can draw a line, I think, from Marion County in the Northwest straight across through Coleman County, and then to over to the east side of Georgia. And I see a question, and I know that Senator Sessions, Senator Strange, Senator Jones, they all had offices in Dothan. And I apologize, I just assumed Senator Tuberville kept it there. So I don't know that for a fact that he did, but I know all the other senators did keep the Dothan office that Senator Sessions did open in Dothan. But they all have field reps in their offices. They all have caseworkers in their offices. And then I know, just for an example, Senator Shelby, being from Tuscaloosa, he has his state director in Tuscaloosa, and he uses that position basically as a driver. He hires a young man who has recently graduated Alabama, and when he flies in, this young man goes and picks him up, and he's his driver. He always does prefer it to be a male because they're in the car one-on-one together. And as you all know from the past 10, 15 years, that's just not something he wants to open up for any, accusations or rumors, whatever you call it. So he just steers clear of that, like Vice President Pence did. So that's how Shelby uses his state director. Congressman Aderholt has a district director, and he's in charge of all of us. He's not a driver. He is our boss. He's my immediate supervisor, and we go to him for any questions or concerns. Our legislative staff, I've kind of covered the state and district staff. The legislative staff in our office is kind of two-pronged. We have, or in DC, we have a legislative staff and we have administrative staff. The administrative staff is our chief of staff, who kind of leads us all, the congressman's scheduler, our staff assistant, who greets you when you walk in the door. She answers the phones, schedules tours, stuff like that. The congressman's scheduler, as you can imagine, if we have 4 district offices and the DC office, and we were all trying to organize his time, to borrow a title from Trent Lott's book, it would be like herding cats. So we have a centralized scheduler in the DC office who handles that. And then the legislative staff, we have 5 legislative aides right now. They each have their areas of interest. I know that Mr. Tucker works with Megan Medley a lot. She covers health care issues. And so he would go to her with all his health questions, policy issues. Hey, this bill that's being proposed, we'd love for the congressman to co-sponsor it, or we would love the congressman to vehemently oppose that bill. That's how, constituents get their issues to the congressman. They go through the appropriate legislative in DC to make their concerns known. That's about it on the district versus DC offices and how we're set up and what we do. Do y'all have any questions about that? I hope I haven't missed any in the chat.
Craig, that's a huge help. I'm going to ask one question just to try to help get this kicked off. And then Linda, maybe you can facilitate the discussion with the partners. But just to kind of pick up on one item that you mentioned, and it got a little bit of attention in the chat and on my text. You mentioned that Representative Aderholt, like Senator Shelby and other members of the delegation, is interested in and is making proposals for certain earmarks or whatever the latest term is. I'm also aware that maybe a couple of members of the delegation chose not to do that. Can you say a little bit more about not just the subject of earmarks and what they are, but kind of maybe what you're looking for, what you're interested in, what might get your interest? Because, we have 24 people here and some of them may want to make a proposal the next time around. And I would like for people to be able to hear a little bit more about how you and the representative and your staff review those requests.
Sure. Thank you for that question. And I just saw something come up on the chat. I graduated law school in 2011 from Ole Miss. So coming up on 11 years, which is crazy. I'm not that old. I don't know how that happened. But so earmarks, we learn year to year because Speaker Pelosi reinstated them last year. They are very, very different from the earmarks of old from the 90s and early 2000s. Last year, it was just a cluster. They were announced that we were doing them late. We only had about a month to prepare. This year, we had a little bit more warning on what they would look like, but that even changed. They sent out guidance, and then week to week, the guidance would change. So I'm going to tell you a story that Congressman Aderholt told a group just a few weeks ago when he was asked the same question. He said, I'm not going to tell you ever what will or will not be considered or put forth as an earmark from our office. He said back in, I believe he said 2004, the city of Rainbow City over in Etowah County was looking for a ferry to cross the river over there. And he said, a ferry? I've never heard of federal funding for a ferry. And he said, but okay, yeah, send us the information, your support letters, all of that, and we'll look into it. And he said, just so happened when he got that and submitted or went to the committee where that money would come from, they had put in millions of dollars for ferry and water travel. So Rainbow City got him a ferry. So you never know what the federal government is going to fund or have a pot of money set aside for. So it's really difficult for us to say, this is a yes, this is a no, until we get your applications, we start looking through committee requirements. But general guidelines, there are 13 subcommittees on the Appropriations Committee, such as transportation, defense, commerce, justice, and science is one. So in Huntsville, the FBI, which is under the Justice Department, has just built a huge facility in Huntsville. Congressman Aderholt is on the Appropriations Committee. He's the ranking member because we're in the minority. The Democrats have the chairman positions in all of the subcommittees and the Appropriations Committee. Because we're in the minority, our leaders on the full Appropriations Committee and then the 13 subcommittees are called ranking members. So he's the ranking member on the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee currently. So people come to us from the FBI all the time. Hey, we've got this project in Huntsville. Can you help us get it funded? So that's what we do locally. The city of Russellville in my home county of Franklin County, last year, they applied for an earmark to improve their exit ramps on highway. It's Alabama Highway 24 and Alabama Highway 43 or US Highway 43. So for that to be eligible, it has to be connected to a US highway system. So it was both of them actually. US 43 runs north and south through Russellville. And then Alabama Highway 24 was also an Appalachian Regional Commission, ARC, which is a federal organization that funds projects all in Appalachia. It's 13 states that runs from New York to Mississippi. And as we all know, a lot of times Appalachia is left behind with the rest of the country, whether it be infrastructure or whatever. So they've created this highway system, and Alabama Highway 24, which runs from the state line in my hometown of Red Bay all the way to Decatur, is part of that ARC highway system. It's also known as Corridor V. I-22 that runs from Memphis to Birmingham, that's known as Corridor X, and is also part of the ARC highway system. So this Russellville project fit the bill as far as the transportation and infrastructure guidelines for earmarks. It was connected to a United States highway. That's all it needed. And so we were able to submit that last year on behalf of the city of Russellville. Now, unfortunately, the Senate decided to play politics with the transportation and infrastructure earmarks that were submitted last year. So none of those were funded. Another example of something that was funded through HUD, the subcommittee on appropriations that works with HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Department, Sheffield in Colbert County, the city of Sheffield, was looking to tear down some blighted houses in the city of Sheffield. So to be able to do that, they have to do studies, environmental impact statements, and all of that. And so they needed a good bit of funding. I think it was over $1 million for that earmark. They came to us. It fit the criteria for the HUD subcommittee, and we were able to get that funded. Sheffield received their check a few months ago. So because they came to us, earmarks are available again. They fit the bill. We put it forward. It was voted on. It passed. The president signed it into law. Sheffield got that direct money. It didn't go through Montgomery. It went straight from DC to Sheffield. The mayor, their housing authority, was able to begin work on that project, I think, a few weeks ago. If not, it's coming this summer. And so they'll be able to tear down those houses, and whatever they decide to do with it after that is up to them. It's like I said, the congressman believes we can send down money to do these projects, and then we get out of your way. And so those are examples that two that were, one that was, one that ultimately was not, but we did submit both of those. Very different. One was blighted houses, one was infrastructure. Schools can go after these. I know this year UNA has submitted some for us. One was a huge one to build a walkway over one of the streets that runs right down through campus at UNA in Florence. That would go to the educational subcommittee on appropriations, of course. It fit the bill. That looks like one that we will be submitting this year. You were right, Mr. Tucker. Some congressmen decided not to participate in earmarks. So I guess folks in that district, their only options would be to go to their senators to apply for earmarks. So then you're competing against the whole state, because we're only allowed 15. We can only submit 15 this year. Last year was 10, this year is 15. So, it's just harder to actually get the project funded when you go to the Senate, just because you're competing against the whole state instead of one district. Does that answer your question, Mr. Tucker? Do you have anything else about earmarks?
That's really helpful, Craig. I know that some people may have some specific ideas and may want to follow up with you in the next couple of months.
Sure. And Linda, you would need to contact your individual congressmen or senators. I know that we all kind of have our own process. If you're in the 4th district You can go to the Congressman's website. I think our appropriations form is on there, or email me and I can get that to you. Again, it's too late for this year, but you could look at it and see what would be required for next year. It might be tweaked a little bit depending on what leadership, tells us that we're going to have to do next year with earmarks, but it would be very simple.
Thanks. That's really helpful. At this point, Linda, I'm going to defer. I know that other people may have questions and comments for our visitor.
Well, and I did want to say this, if I can. You also asked me about the Congressman's vision for Alabama. And one thing that I think would be that he has done and will continue to do that will be helpful to your group is broadband. The Congressman believes that, broadband, having access to broadband today is how his parents and their generation felt about phones and televisions. It's a necessity. It's just something we have to have. And currently in Alabama, only 60% of our state is equipped for broadband. And I live in a very rural part of Alabama, and we don't have access. We have internet access, but not to high-speed broadband at my home. What I'm coming to you with today, and it keeps popping up on my screen, unstable connection. So the Congressman, even before COVID, had sent down hundreds of millions of dollars through the Appropriations Committee to fund rural broadband. And then since COVID, broadband money has been included in ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. He has sent it, he voted for broadband money in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then in appropriations bills since COVID has happened. So there is money in Alabama for broadband. And to give an example of how that money gets from DC to actually laying lines. So Tom Bigby Electric Corporation in Hamilton, Alabama, if you've ever driven through I-22, I think it's about exit 14. If you're going west, there's a huge building over on the left. That's Tom Bigby Electric. And Mr. Steve Foshee there has taken this money and this initiative, has partnered with Freedom Fiber in Northwest Alabama, and they have connected Marion County, Fayette County, Lamar County, Winston County, and now they're moving up into Franklin County. And I know there's still some spots in those counties that I mentioned that may not be connected just yet, because you're actually going and laying physical line. You're going pole to pole. Sometimes the poles that are there are not viable to use for this. So they're having to replace poles, and literally feet by feet, mile by mile. So that's how it's getting from DC to the state to broadband laid in your community. Now, there has to be an organization in your area willing to take this up. As I said, Mr. Foshee and Tom Bigby took up that mantle here in Northwest Alabama and have been extremely successful with it. We're hoping to have it in Red Bay, in my hometown, within the next 3 years. And so, little by little, mile by mile, he's making it happen. So I know there's a lot of electric co-ops around the state that have picked this up. In Colbert County in the Shoals, rural Franklin County has made more progress with this than Colbert County, where you have, bigger cities with Muscle Shoals and Sheffield, Tuscumbia. So now Colbert County has started, hey, if they can do this in Franklin County and Winston County, we can do this up here. So they have created a task force in Colbert County to address the broadband issue. And because what we've done down here with Foshee and Tom Bigby might work for us, it might not work up in Colbert County, but it also doesn't mean they have to reinvent the wheel. So they can take what we've done and say, hey, well, that would work for us. Well, this might need to be tweaked a little bit, but we can still use a lot of their ideas. And Mr. Foshee at Tom Bigby has gone all around Alabama, in Mississippi and Tennessee, and has touted his success story to try to help groups in other areas do the same thing. So if that's an issue for you in your area, I would love to send me an email, shoot me whatever, and I would love to connect you with Mr. Foshee and let him explain, what might work for you, who in your area might be able to take up this project. And with health issues, Can you imagine the telehealth that's beginning around the state? They can't do that without internet access and reliable, fast, secure internet access. So that is something that we're seeing growing so much in rural areas. It connects somebody in rural Marion County to UAB, to Huntsville Hospital, to Helen Keller Hospital up my way, wherever. And so that's another issue that we're proud to say that Congressman Aderholt has worked on and is continuing to work on. And he said, when people think of me right now in the state, I want them to know I'm fighting for broadband for them. So that's an issue that's very, very close to us. That's what he wants to see Alabama take on. As far as his other or vision for Alabama, Congressman Aderholt is a strong proponent of the pro-life cause. That's something that's always been near and dear to his heart. He is a leader of the National Prayer Breakfast. He serves on the Helsinki Commission, which is for the stabilization and security of Europe, which, as you all know, is just crazy right now with what's going on in Ukraine. When that happened, he was actually over in Lithuania with the Helsinki Commission, and they had to be moved to Vienna, Austria, because nobody knew what Russia was going to do. So he has taken his role as chairman of the Prayer Breakfast here in America and has put that, installed, similar organizations all over Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, former Yugoslavian states in Serbia and Croatia and Montenegro. He's over there all the time, spreading the gospel, and he sees that as something he can do with his position and his microphone that he has. That's something that's very near and dear to him. He also loves that Alabama is such a pro-business state, and the governor and state legislature have worked very hard to make Alabama business friendly, and he wants to promote things in DC and send funding home from DC that allows that to continue and to grow. And just take a look at our automobile industry. From 20 years ago to today, we're one of the leading states in the nation for automobile industry, and not just direct automobile manufacturing, but think of all the offshoot companies, like in Muscle Shoals, where my office is. There's North American Lighting, and they produce headlamps and tail lamps for about 15 to 20 different cars and models across the spectrum, not just Toyota, but Toyota, Nissan, you name it. They're doing those. And they have a direct line with Northwest Shoals, the community college where my office is, to take students. They have installed their machines on campus at Northwest. So students, when they're in class learning, they train on the machines they go directly into, and they go directly into those good paying jobs. So that's another way you see it come full circle. Because Alabama has a friendly pro-business agenda, we've been able to blow up with the automobile industry. And then because of money that the congressman has sent down for educational programs, training programs, vocational programs, you go a student to education to work. And it's a seamless transition. And that is a constant supply of employment, employees, job creation, tax revenue here in the state. He wants to see the defense industry grow. Huntsville is booming. And especially because of Senator Shelby and his amazing support of NASA, Redstone Arsenal, it's thriving. The SLS system, which is still powering the rockets that go up into space. And the congressman knows we never claim that we can fill this big Senator Shelby-sized hole that we're about to see. But with his position on the Appropriations Committee, we want to do what we can to pick up that mantle from Senator Shelby and see that grow and just have Alabama prosper. And that doesn't just include Huntsville. Think of the Port of Mobile and all that Senator Shelby has done down there, and that the congressman wants to see continue, because that's how a lot of supplies get into Alabama. The rockets and satellites that I said that are being held up right now on the Tennessee River, those come through the Port of Mobile, up the Tennessee Tom Bigby waterway and into the Tennessee River. So, whether it's North Alabama, South Alabama, the Wiregrass, wherever, we're all one, and what we do in one area benefits everybody. And that's what Congressman Aderholt wants to see and continue to promote.
Thanks a lot, Craig. I think people can see that this congressman really is Alabama's third senator. With that, Linda, I'm going to defer to your kind of helping to guide us through the last few minutes and calling on speakers who may have comments or questions.
I'll check the chat. Oh, thank you for sending Mr. Foshi's email address. And if any of you would like for me to facilitate a call or whatever, I'll be glad to do that. What type of outreach gets our attention? Well, the face-to-face meeting, we're happy to meet with anybody. There's nothing that's going to turn us off. That's what your tax dollars pay my salary to do. If there's an issue, if you've got a project, whatever it is, you give me a call, shoot me an email. If you're in the district, if you're out of the district and would like for me to facilitate a meeting or, just share contact information for your congressman or your senators, field representative in your part of the state, I'm glad to do that. What type of outreach gets our attention? When we're trying to fund a project from the federal government, we do like to see that the local communities are willing to put some skin in the game. There's nothing that's ever going to be 100% fully funded from the federal government. The local communities, the counties, the cities, whether it's just administrative fees, there's got to be something coming from the counties. We've got to see that there's support, such as the Russellville earmark for the interchanges on 24 and 43. ALDOT had to submit support letters saying that ALDOT is on board with this project. So when you come to us, show us that the state agencies, the corresponding local agencies are on board, not just, hey, the mayor has this dream project that we'd like to do, send us some money. So, do your homework, make sure that all the other affected agencies and groups are on board with that request. That's huge. Just showing us that you've done that homework and you're ready to move forward. You're waiting on us to give you a response. That's good. I saw something just come through.
I think there was one from Debbie McCauley. It says, how can we fix this for the rural areas in Alabama? I think when you were talking about the broadband, Randolph County is a rural area and we are in need of serious broadband services. When we had hybrid and virtual options for our students, she's, in the school system, it was a nightmare for them. So how can we fix that for Alabama?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I played Randolph County in football in high school and y'all kicked our butts. That was not fun. But my mom is a 39-year sixth grade teacher. And trust me, I heard the same issue that you're bringing to me daily from her. And again, the money from the federal government is there. It's there in the state. ARPA funds were divided. The state got millions last year on May 22nd. They're getting their second half of that payment next month on May 22nd. That will include more broadband funding. The money's at the state, but the state's not going to come in and lay the lines and do that infrastructure work. So there's got to be a local company, a local organization, a co-op willing to take up that mantle like Tom Bigby did. And again, I've seen it county after county. They form these task force groups. And that's the best way, because what happens in Randolph County may not be the best thing that what happened or to follow in what happened from Marion County. So I would say, get a group of people with this interest together, decide what works best for you. And it may be a regional approach like Tom Bigby did. So get this group together, discuss and decide what works best for you, and then find this organization that's willing to take up that mantle. And again, Mr. Foshi can help with that. We have, as district staffers, when issues arise in the state, we kind of all take an issue, and most of the time it's one that's important to us. The last one I did was when Mrs. Obama did the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act with school lunches, and kids weren't eating. If they go in and see a brown biscuit that looks and tastes like cardboard, they're not going to eat it. So I took up that mantle for the congressman James Manasco, who is my counterpart in our Gadsden office, has taken up the broadband issue for the congressman. So I'll be happy to put you in touch with him. And with it, Randolph County being over on the east side of Alabama and him working out of our Gadsden office, he would be more familiar with your specific needs over on that side of the state as well. And he's much more knowledgeable about the broadband issue than I am. So that's another resource that we'll be happy to provide for you. More?
Had a couple other questions. One, I guess two more. Interested in knowing more about HUD Housing Finance Authority. And then there was one about transportation and housing for Region 5.
Okay. With the HUD issue, there is lots of money for that right now. The state is flush. Every state is flush with cash right now. We just keep going deeper in debt. But because of the pandemic, the Trump and Biden administrations, a lot of their reaction to that, and nobody knew what they were doing, but was just to send money for everything. So there is money in the state right now for HUD issues. I don't know specifically what you're asking about. So if you want to give me a little bit more information, I will type in the chat my phone number and my email address, or Mr. Tucker, if you want to do that, that would work. And send me specifics, because that's what we need are specific questions so that we can give you specific answers. And project-based grant, I'm not familiar with this 811 advanced project initiative, but again, just send me some information and I'll get you those answers. We also have available, and I should have told you this before, congressional offices can contact the Congressional Research Service, which is a division of the Library of Congress. And so that specific question, 811, whatever the rest of that was, you send me that with your question, and I send that to the Congressional Research Service, and they send back pages of information specifically on that program, specifically where to go for funding, and not just federal government funding. There may be some private organizations who work in that field. They send anything and everything you could imagine for that. So the CRS, the Congressional Research Service, is a huge tool that we have that we're able to help constituents get information about projects. We had a lady in Marion County who had taken over her father's farm, and she wanted to turn her father's farm into one that produces food for low-income individuals. So how does she get that food to them? What money is available to help her grow that infrastructure on her farm? I sent that to the CRS. They sent me back about 15 pages worth of links and information and contact information for her, and she was able to make that happen. So that is a huge resource that we're able to contact for you. So send me those, and I'll send it up to CRS. And I'm sorry, Linda, what was the other one? Was it something with infrastructure?
Greg, I think the question was about, it's a specific question about supports for people with a range of developmental disabilities in the Birmingham area, but more broadly, this group is focused on advocacy for disability. Maybe you could say a word about, you and I talked a little bit about sequel at the start. I know you and I may not have talked about this, but I had a longtime constituent who was well known in the representative's DC office. The advocate passed away recently, but maybe you could just say a word about Representative Aderholt's work on any disability issues. And we've already had a lot of enthusiasm expressed for your presence with us today. You may get a call, and we may want to see if we can do a visit of some kind in next year's round of this training as well. Absolutely,
I'd be glad to. So as I mentioned, in our DC office, our legislative staff, they tackle certain issues. And Mr. Tucker can tell you what luck we have in getting Megan Medley as our healthcare staffer. Megan has been with the Congressman since 2000 and was just recently promoted to our legislative director. So she's in charge of our entire legislative shop right now. And she, Mr. Tucker, I don't know if you know this, but she has a sister who has severe health issues and actually just passed away a few weeks ago. And so this is something that has been near and dear to Megan's heart since she's worked for the congressman. And when you have that passion for an issue, it drives you. And Megan has that. So she makes sure that these type of issues are always brought to the congressman's face. They're at the top of his list. And while he's not on the healthcare subcommittee on appropriations, he does have a full vote or a vote on the full appropriations committee. And he always uses that vote to send money to these issues. We have advocacy groups from every type of healthcare issue that's out there in our DC office. And we're so glad that a lot of COVID restrictions are being lifted in DC, so these guys can get back to us face to face instead of phone or video calls, because there's nothing like shaking a man or a woman's hand and looking them in the eye and saying, yes, this is important to me. It's important to the congressman and we want to help. And so those meetings are happening. Everybody that you can think of is coming up. The congressman makes sure that when there are meetings in the state regarding these issues, that somebody's there. My grandmother suffered from dementia. And so when Hudson Alpha in Huntsville puts on their Alzheimer's dementia workshops, I'm there. And that's something that is very near and dear to me, and it's special what they're doing. So every family across America is involved in some way, touched by health issues and developmental issues, whatever you want to categorize that as. So we take that and we run with it. And the congressman, he's there, he's willing to do what he can. And with us being on the appropriations committee, we don't serve on other committees that deal with proposing legislation and writing laws. We deal with the funding. And that's what you want. The laws are there, but they need the money. And so that's what we're here to do. And as I said, with Megan's strong advocacy and with her growing influence in our office, that will always be something at the top of the congressman's priority.
Thanks a lot for sharing that, Kreg. And I'm so sorry I had not heard about Megan's loss. I will send her a condolence note.
And that's why she has not responded to your last few emails. But yeah, it's been tough for her. But as I said, every family in America is touched by that. She just happens to be going through it right now. So
I understand, of course. So Linda, I see that we're at the hour. There may be other questions, but I want to defer to you, Linda. And thanks, Kreg, for being here with us today. People can see, we have 24 people have gathered on a Saturday morning. Kreg, sure. Incredibly generous of your time. I'll pitch it back to you at this point, Linda.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to add one more thing before you leave, Kreg. The last time I was in DC and we were doing some visits with another group that I was with. We went to see Representative Aderholt, and he was like, "Hey, would y'all like to go into the gallery? We have gallery passes." So he gave our group that, and that's for those of you that have never done that. That's like when you're going in, like when you're talking to a representative and they have to go and vote on an issue, and you're ever watching that live on TV. You can go and sit up in the gallery and look down and watch all the House of Representatives go in and go up and vote and watch them down there. And it's an incredible experience. So I really enjoyed that part of it, just making our trip to see him in his office a little more special. And so it's the kind of person he is, and I know you enjoy working for him.
He's a great boss. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll tell you, having worked for him in DC, that's his favorite part of his job. When somebody comes up, he loves it when school groups come up and gets to do that with the kids. But anybody, he has been there for a long time. He was first elected in '96, but he has never, ever forgotten why he's continually sent back up there. And so when his constituents or those from the state come up, he loves to show off the Capitol and to teach to teach his constituents and those visitors about their house. It is the people's house. It's your building. And that's something that will never change. So if any of you ever get a chance to go up to DC, call me or call our DC office. We schedule those tours. It sounds like yours happens spur of the moment, and that's great too. But give us a call and we'd love to organize something like that for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, thank y'all for having me today.
Thanks so much for being with us, Craig. I hope you can enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Absolutely. Y'all do the same. Roll Tide. I like your pen.
Thank you. Look
Bye.
at my background.
Oh, I like it. Yes, ma'am. Roll Tide.
I was wondering what that was. I didn't get to get the close-up view of it. And I'm a War Eagle girl, so darn. I need a better background.